primary thing we control, because if we control our health, that's a stock. We control our dignity in the house, that's a stock. We control our finances, those are the stock. And if we could have health and happiness and respect for each other within that house, maybe the overall stock of that family is a happy family is there. So I have a stock called happiness, and these are related to many, many different stocks. One of that is financial stress. And you can measure that financial stress in terms of maybe the savings amount. When you read the book, it is excellent at developing and giving you something to think about, but it in hand does not provide you the inherent details to be able to do that. And that's supposed to be somewhat coming from lean systems and operations research and statistics, so you can kind of build that up. But even if you kind of take a look at happiness being a stock, and then health being something underneath that, and then other things being up there, and one of this is the savings amount. Here's the problem that I've got. You know, when you talk about savings, the question is, first of all, this is not the end, this is something I managed to connect to other things, but savings is the stock, fair enough. And I could pick that up this morning simply because I think we could all relate to something. And then you say that I have reinforcing loops that increase the saving, and I have balancing loops that take away, right? And it says no, I've got $100 bazillion. Ooh, I'm going to control that. That's not a bad idea. I mean, that's not a bad thing to have. But you say, okay, that's too much money. We're not having fun, so let's spend it. So I have reinforcing loops that add to it, and I have balancing loops that take away that money. But it's not so simple. It really isn't that simple. Because there are many, many things and dimensions that you have to understand. I could just put a little loop here and say, oh, that's balancing and it's all money. But that's not true. Because I have Nina that takes money from that account. I have my son Kern that takes money from that, takes that money, and I take money out of that account. And if you said, oh my God, that's all the same thing, that is not necessarily the same thing. Why is it not the same thing? Because I do not control, there is not a singular place that we control how much Simran is spending, or Karen is spending, or Nina is spending, or I'm spending. So they have the ability to go into this account, because Simran, who's going to college, we've given him some, what is it, a debit card? And it has money on it. And we don't know whether he's spending $1 or if he's spending $500. I just don't know, but he spends it. So am I controlling it? No. Now, Kern, he is in Ohio and he's in residency, and he called day before yesterday, and he says, Mom, Dad, I've got the educational loan, and could you send me money so I can pay the loan? So Nina looked at it and said, okay, send him the money. Okay, now, Nina wants to live well. Oh, I don't want to cook today. Well, you didn't cook for the last 5 days. She says, well, this is not the old 50 years ago. If you want to eat, you cook yourself. Okay. All right, let's go to Ohio, not next, I think next week or something like that. She said, when you finish teaching your class, we're going to go to Ohio. Okay. What are we going to do? Oh, we're going to go have fun. Well, okay, why do you want to go to Ohio to have fun? Well, I want to see my son too. Okay, all right. Nina, can we not mow our own lawn? Yes, we can, but I don't want to. Nina, we're just two people. Can we not clean our own house? I mean, I can take the garbage out. No, 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 we need somebody to come in every week because we're going to clean. She wants to live well. You understand that that stock is related to 4 different withdrawals for different reasons. And the stock that I have to be able to take a look at is the motivation of what is happening. Simran wants to have fun in college. So yesterday was his 21st birthday. Daddy, where's my birthday present? So we give him some money. Well, what are you going to do today? Well, I'm going to celebrate with you on Saturday, but because I'm 21, I'm going to go bar hopping. Really? Means, okay. But you understand that this withdrawal does not have what? The book, they have what? Leverages, this thing. It doesn't have one of these. It is not a single person that controls that. How much they turn the faucet on and how much they close the faucet is an independent function based on those 4 people and the moves that they have over time. So, Nina comes back after all of this time and says, oh, I think we're running out of money. So I come back and I say, what is the reinforcing? Watch this reinforcing, right? This is the reinforcing. Reinforcing means how, when we need money, can I get money? And I just put a couple things up here. I said, what I earn. We have some investments, the investments come through, and then Nina has her business, and that generates. But here's the key. Where the book is wrong is that they believe that everything has a knob. Right? Is that not what they say? Turn the knob, turn the knob, turn the knob, turn the knob. Now let me ask you, what knob am I going to turn to increase my income at UT? It's there. It is there. The control is not within my hands, and therefore I look at that and I say, that's a fixed thing. I can't control that knob. Now, what can I do? I look at the family investments. Whatever investments we have made is bringing us money, but the knob has a length of time. For example, we invested in a hotel in Atlanta. Well, we invested like a year and a half ago. The hotel is going to open up in December, and then by the time the hotel stabilizes and starts earning, will be another, year and a half. I have to wait 3 years where I turn this knob on, and what happens? 3 years later, maybe or maybe not, that there's anything coming through. And then I have Nina's business, which we can play around little on a monthly basis to see what happens, but you notice that I am kind of stuck in the sense that I have 3 reinforcing loops. One is fixed. The other has what? Remember, I believe in chapter 4 or 5, a delay. A huge delay. So if Nina says, where's the money for next month? I can't go turn that knob on and say, hey, there it is. The only place possibly that I can work on is this. Or the other thing I can do is if you come and say, well, where's the flexibility come? I can go find a job at McDonald's, so when you come up to the door, I can say, can I get you coffee? I could do those things, but those are the things. So when you think about things very simplistically, you can. These are disconnected. And every one of them has a different leverage. This, to a certain extent, I can add this and add this and add this because I go to Nina, I say, here's my paycheck. Nina says, here's what I've earned here says this is what came from the investment, so it is connected. The other is disconnected. It is disconnected by stocks that manage those 4 different people. But, so this, even a simple, and I told you this belongs and it connects to other things. So I can make it very superficial and simplistic, which is not a bad idea to start out with. I could not figure this out, because I was thinking about it last night and this morning. I said, because Carla said, she said, just for a few minutes, spend some time on loops. And I can make it very simplistic, because if I say, what the thought process that helped me is, I said, okay, here's what. This is what the simplistic part helped me. I said, if I want my family to be happy, here's the things that I have to manage. I have to manage health. I have to manage finances. And I have to manage, to some extent, what you call respect. That if you came to me and Nina said, okay, you know, I want you to do this, I could say, yes, ma'am, I could do that. And if my son said, could you help me with this, I would say, and if I talk to them, if I could manage those 3 things, I could possibly manage my family from a systems perspective. But it is a very complicated thing, because no matter how hard I try, there are periods of time that one of them is upset at me. All right? And I can give you a very small reason, and I think we all live with it, and I brought this in because I want you to see it. My son said, I'm going to move out of the house, I'm going to move 2 miles away. And Daddy, you pay all the bills. I said, I'll pay all the bills except you have to pick up 1 bill. If you're going to move out of the house, you pick up 1 bill. It could be the electricity, it could be whatever it is, but you pick up 1 bill. So he said, I'll pick up my food cost. All right, I said, okay. How long do you think it lasted? 2 months or something like that. And now he says, Daddy, I'm under too much stress. Okay, I'm under too much stress, right? So I'm paying $600 a month for his house. I'm paying about $100 in electricity. I'm paying his car insurance. I'm paying for his car. All right, and my agreement with all of this was that you pick up whatever your food cost is. And then I said, if you're running short, you come home and you pick up groceries. So his mom said, well, maybe this is what my condition was when you moved out. He said, Mama, but I'm under stress. You don't understand how college is. All right? So he had this little think with Nina about, you guys just don't understand me, and you don't love me, and all this kind of stuff, and here it is. So Nina comes to me yesterday and says, he's my baby. Don't worry about it. We're going to pay for everything. I mean, we are his dad and mom. You see the complexity in that? It's not the story, it is the loop that is killing me. Is because loop is not that consistent or not connected or not connected, it's temporal. That over a period of time, it changes. So when I look at Y12 or now, my God, if my savings account is this messed up, can you imagine what you have to go through on your case study, when you analyze case studies at work, when you look at your own families? But what it does do for me is it articulates a different way of thinking. Where do you think my biggest problem is now?
The illusion of control.
Working out of one account.
You notice, we all believe, Mark is absolutely correct. I believe that I control to some extent any of these items. I control nothing. And therefore, for us to be able to say, and I don't control, some loops I don't control at all, some loops I control, but by the time I twist them around, it takes me 4 years before I see anything happen. But that time, and the time in which the money may be needed, may be 2 different things. Do you see? Because the reason I'm spending a little bit of time is Carla told me, she said, just quickly review this idea of balancing and reinforcing loops. Is that okay? All right. What I did yesterday, yesterday was Thursday. On Wednesday, I went through the book, and I looked at chapter 6 because that's the next chapter that we were to cover. And I read that, and what I put up here is not exactly that. It's in reverse order, and it is broken down into categories now, where they just have 12, 11, 10, 9, and they kind of talked about it. Because to me, when I read those things, I either have to memorize them, and when I memorize things, I forget, and therefore I don't understand. And here's the point. Because we have talked about what are the problems? Tragedy of the commons. The rich becoming richer. You know, those are the kind of things we talked about last time. So now we're talking about not the problems, but probably the most important thing, which is if I was to create a new system, how would I design this new system? This is the first time, because if you look at it, what's it, this is section 3, I think, section 1, 2, 3, each has a certain chapter, this is section 3. And what came across to me that I think is very important to you is this point. I mean, we always known this. And if you remember Lean, where we went and said, here's the critical path, here's this, here's the bottleneck. What were we trying to do? To find the leverage point. So leverage points are a basis by which, if you understand those, it will give you an idea on how to design a system. So I want you to kind of think about leverage points for a minute, and then I have a case study that I'm going to show, and I want you to tell me whether we did a good job on the case study or not, from a systems perspective. How do you talk to your spouse or your friend and get your way?
Make them think it's their idea.
Yeah.
Tell me how to do it. Help me. When you want something from your boss, what do you do?
Tell them the benefits first. To them.
I mean, who said?
Tell them the benefits to them first.
So just the opposite, hope they go the other way.
Here's what I do. I know what makes Nina think about things. I only address not the entirety of those things. I touch that button, and I know that if I didn't say anything but just say, what if we could do this? And not to say, not that I want to do it. What if we could do this? And then walk away for half an hour, an hour. I could come back and most likely, and not 100% of the time, but a majority of the time, you say, that was a great idea. But what do I touch? What do I touch? Things that I know are important to her. Kids. If I wanted to go to New York, I said, but we could stop on the way and see the kids. Because I know I have nothing to do with the kids. I want to go to New York, but you see what I did. I addressed a leverage point. We all instinctively do that. We all instinctively do that, but we don't do that in the idea of designing systems. And this is the key point. They mentioned in creating change in a system, they talked about a lot of stuff. And if you open up chapter 6, a lot of it was this was a chapter that taught me a lot, but it was probably the hardest to read. Okay? Because half of the time I didn't understand what they were referring to. So I had to kind of put it in my own perspective. Here's what I came up with. And I'm not sure, and I want you to tell me if what you read fits into my interpretation. That leverage point is just not a leverage point. It has many dimensions. Leverage point is just not a leverage point. You could have leverage point at a very strategical dimension, or you can have leverage points at a very tactical. Strategic. Let's go to New York. Tactical. I'm going to cook you your favorite meal. I thought about last night. Last night we had Herb Devon and his wife over, and he was the head of facilities and operations for ORNet. And so he came in, and I thought about leverage points because he's a friend of mine. What did I do? I went out to try to find the kind of wine that he would like to drink. I tried to guess at that. Why? I could have put any wine in, but why did I do that? Leverage to create what? Enhance my friendship. So I came up with this idea, and again, this is not what they did, so I'm not sure that we would all agree with this. That I can create a leverage point in the paradigm of how I think. I can create a leverage point on how I define my system. I can create a leverage point in the physical system that is operating, and I can create a leverage point in the information system and how the systems flow, the information flows. You see that the difference? What is the difference? Again, I'm not sure that this is a good idea to bring this thing up at this moment. On Tuesday, what happened? Right or wrong is not the question. What happened on Tuesday? What changed? I mean, most people say, that I believe in my life, in my everyday life, it does not make a bit of difference who was the president. So why should I care? What changed?
People knew what the path forward was.
Here's the thought process I have. I want you to kind of think it this way. Did the paradigms on how this country thought change? Was it the definition of what this country is and what we should be doing changed? Was it the operations of the government that changed, or how information is disseminated between the government and the public changed? What changed?
People actually knew what the path forward was.
But the thought process, something changed, obviously, because when I looked at the elections at 7 o'clock, somebody else was supposed to win. At 9 o'clock, nobody knew. And at 10:30, 11, the person that was not supposed to win won. What changed? Was it about how we think, how we define our government, how the government runs? What part of it do you think was the thought process behind this change?
The leadership.
Paradigm
It was a
of
paradigm.
Fuller meaning something.
Some people would say it could be a paradigm shift. Other could be say, here we have a different goal for our country, but the paradigm hasn't shifted. We still live in a republic. Other people can say, hey, he may change the way the government runs and make it more efficient. I don't know, but let's assume that happens. You have to understand what happened, because there was a leverage point that caused something.
Would it be, I would have thought information systems, because
the polls were so dramatically off that the information that we were receiving this whole time was obviously skewed, so that was our loop that we were getting back, and then somewhere in the middle it started to change, and then it ended up on the other end.
I was thinking information from a different perspective,
Oh.
but you're correct. Okay, that does. Now, I'm going to show you a small case study. And I would want to show you and open you up to my vulnerability and my weaknesses until maybe 2-3 days ago. Okay. So, remember we talked about emergency rooms, is that correct? I'm going to if I can kind of take you through and I want you to make a, after I finish this, and I'm not going to spend more than 10 or 15 minutes on this emergency, I'm not going to go through all the details, but I want you to tell me, what did we just do? So the motivation that we had was long waiting lines. Okay, that's what initially got us the project that we worked on. The national average is 135, the Tennessee state is 129, and this hospital that we were working with was about 170. And as I've been telling you previously, that this is based on what? That determines revenue. If you're below the national average or above the national average, you get paid differently for the same services. So the other part of the revenue that we started thinking about was that people that come into the system and walk away because it's too crowded, or people that come and get some level of service and they say, guys, this is not worth it, just walk away. And that's a fair amount of people. I mean, I would say percentage-wise it's a huge number, but if I looked at how many, I can't remember how many, it's like a couple of thousand people that walk away. Okay. So, the approach that we had was previously, we kind of, remember the previous slides that I showed you on emergency rooms was very simplified, wasn't it? Registration, what is it? Triage, medical diagnosis or medical services, and then what? Discharge. And I presented, I cheated you. I cheated you because that's really not the process. So what we did is, I want to take you through, we looked at the process not in that particular form, but if you look at 21 different steps that occur, and in these 21 steps, we could look at 22 different paths that somebody in an emergency room could take. 22 different. At this moment, what are you thinking? The goal is what?
Be treated and leave.
No, reduce the
Reduce
the time, right? Because if I could do that, more people will not leave if they come in, and we're going to get paid more for each service. Where would you leverage? Leverage. The question here is leverage, right? Where would our leverage point be?
It'd be places-
If you were to fix this process and you were here, and this would be an ORNL or a Y12 or a Rubbermaid process, it says you need to find the leverage point.
If there's 22 different paths, wouldn't you take something that's common to every path?
Could be. That's one way of thinking. Could be. Any other approach, do you think?
I would say number 3 on there, the first wait time, because if the majority of the patients are walking away because the wait, that first
Mhm.
initial wait time is the longest, that's where I would want to focus, is reducing that wait time, because then once they're actually in the door and in the process, they're probably less likely to leave once they've actually kind of, you know, gotten that, past that initial step and they're actually starting to be.
In fact,
positive.
what they're saying is some people come in and say, hey, I'm hurting or something, they wait a few minutes and walk out. Some people actually go through the triage and say, hey, take my blood pressure or whatever it is, then they walk out. So, again, the question is, we don't know, all right? I just want you to kind of see what we had done and see if what we were trying to figure out was a leverage point. Leverage point. The key in all of this is leverage point. So, where you go? Why is it not doing this? So, what we did was we looked at path 1, path 2, path 3, path 4, path 5, and we started looking at who comes in, the level of acuity, et cetera, down the line. And we had all of these paths that were identified. We started looking at some tool that Dr. Garcia talked about. Say yes. Are we catching Dr. Garcia? Thank you. Right. And then we started playing around with dynamic programming. We started looking, again, this is not the key here. The key in here is in just 1 minute. We broke it down and we started to understand what the sections were and what the routings were. We started looking at times that were spent weighted in each of these sections for every path. So every path, section 1, every path, section 2, every path, section 3, all paths were analyzed so we could find out where, what path, who is creating the greatest amount of waiting time. Okay. So we did all of this. We did all of this and started analyzing it. And we actually realized that we could reduce possibly, by looking at certain things, possibly go from 170 minutes down to 140 minutes, which is below the average. So that, what do? Just cross the threshold, and now I get paid 20% more for the services that I've got. So now, I go through, I look at the weighted, not only the times, but the number of people that go through it, okay? And I found out that path 4 is my leverage point. Notice the word I used, leverage point. All right? It is like talking to Nina and saying, I'm going to go see the kids. I don't want to see the kids. Because every time in our family, every time I see my kids, somehow I end up losing a lot of money.
Why is it a leverage point?
So,
Why was path 4 a leverage point?
why? Because it could possibly have the largest waiting time for the largest volume of people. So if I have the largest volume of people and they're waiting the largest amount of time, and if I could somehow not focus on what? The other stuff, but focus on, let's start using the word, what is it called?
Leverage point.
Leverage point. I could possibly resolve it with a lot less effort and a lot less resistance. Okay? So, we started looking at path 4. Okay? We looked at what were certain things that were way out of control in terms of lines. Okay? We weighted them out. We had this critical path, my God, critical path, leverage path. Okay? Again, I just want you to take a look at this. All right? Summary all the paths. And who said common? And I don't know where the slide is, but the slide also suggests that this path is also common to a lot of other things. That's why we have a huge volume of people coming through. So not only is it a critical, it is a common because a lot of people come through. And then what we did is we started reducing the time, and we actually found out that we could, if we were to fix this, we could actually fix that time and reduce it to less than 150, and therefore we could get the money that we want. Yeah. So here was the suggestions of few things that could be done in that path, all right? So now, I want you to tell me what you thought of that design. Because what did we do? Changing, what is the title of this? Changing the system through leverage points. That's chapter 6, isn't it? Changing the system by understanding leverage points. Do you think that we did a good job? By the way, the guy that did this was our primary guy, is now doing this at Mayo Clinic. He got hired before he graduated.
Well, if it actually worked, then yeah, you did a great job. You know, if you can put that into play and achieve those goals.
Let's assume, let's just make an assumption.
Okay.
That it works. Okay? That it works.
So you did. You got below the average. And
So how many people think this is good?
Get started.
Anybody think that this is not good?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about people's health care, but I mean, your goal is money. The
Yeah, we don't care about people.
people care about their health, but you're after money, I guess. Sorry, there's kind of a conflict.
I think in this case where I didn't show it, one of this is patient satisfaction. Is a metric that we have to include in this, which is the patients should not feel like, oh my God, you know, they missed a couple of things just to get me out of there. Okay, so that's, I don't think, it possibly could come into play, but this is not at this moment a consideration.
So my question is, so when you did the path 4
Mhm.
and you reduced that time, was that just reducing that one path, or did that adjusting that one path reduce the overall time?
Well, because there was so much volume, and that's where people were waiting, and it was a common area, that when we fixed that and reduced the time there, it impacted the, what? The overall
The rest of the
system. And that's why I didn't have to work on the entire system, I just worked on a certain things, just a few things. Not everything, certain things in section 4. For path 4, I only worked it on section 4 and section 5, so I limited my effort to get the results that I want. And I would say that if I was not in this class, I would say, my God, this was a great project. But after being with you and going through this project, I said, that's a terrible project. Tell me why.
It's not really using a leverage point.
What's that?
It's not really using a leverage point. I mean, you're focusing, you're maximizing your return on your investment for effort, but you're not
But
looking
the
at.
leverage point was what we thought was, what is it, path 4, sections 4, sections 5. So instead of hitting everything, path 1, 2, 5, 6, 8, 7 thing, I only focused on that and only a section of the process.
Yeah.
So because that we thought if we could touch that, it would impact the entire system. Just like me telling Nina, I want to go see the kids. Now, so we could talk about the leverage point, because leverage point can mean a lot of stuff.
Does she
Here.
understand that you're gonna spend more money when you go see the kids?
Yeah, I mean, that's the part I don't like.
Well, if she understands that you're gonna spend money, she'll have less.
But they're her babies. I mean, this is a 28-year-old baby that calls his mama and says, Mom, I'm in residency now, and the car that you bought me 4 years ago or 5 years ago, could we switch it to another car?
Hey, he's found the leverage point, right?
He has. Well, I didn't think about that. That is correct. And I told her, I says, your dad drives a 12-year-old Toyota Tundra that hasn't changed it. I bought a newer car, all right? And he said, but Daddy, you know, in medicine, we have to drive BMWs. Right. Let me tell you, now I want you to help me. I don't want to tell you, I want you to help me. paradigm. The two components that they talk about is transcending paradigms was, I think, number 12. If I'm not mistaken, that was the last one. I realized, and I didn't understand it, so I changed it. Transcending paradigms means what? That means that you could have, sorry, go ahead,
I was
please.
saying, changing the lens you look through to, more simplistic way to say it,
I think you're right, because it says there is no such thing as a fixed paradigm. There are flexible and changing paradigms, and you must understand that. So when I was thinking about this class, because when I teach classes, unless it relates to the students don't remember. You could say, hey, you read line 3, and it would make no sense, because it didn't make any sense to me when I was reading it. I said, what did I just read? Okay? Do you believe, for people that are in my age group, or as you are maturing, that your paradigms have shifted with age?
Absolutely.
Why don't you keep the fixed paradigm?
Because we understand more about the overall system, or the feedback loops on
Okay? So, why do we need to have flexible paradigms? I can give you a few examples, if it's okay. When I was hired by UT after I graduated, UT was primarily a teaching institution. It did research, but it was primarily a teaching institution. So, you said, teaching is important. Then it became slowly, over a period of time now, UT is not a teaching institution. UT is more of a research, or want to be a research institution. Therefore, if my paradigm was, I'm going to go teach, but I don't know how to research, what do you think happened to all of those faculty that could not make that transition or change their paradigm?
Gone.
All right, now let me ask you this question. Do you believe Y12, and we can come back to ORNL and then to Rubbermaid. Do you think Y12 has gone through a paradigm shift? I don't know what it is. Tell me what it is. What is it?
Well, as the Cold War kind of wound down, we changed our focus from just making mass amounts of stuff to making a lot less, because we really don't need it, more safely, which is the biggest thing. But we've also looked at other areas and kind of trying to find some other areas to do things.
Okay.
So there's a huge change in
The
how we
recent-
operate over the years.
The recent contract change just moved from an operations and maintenance contract to a cost saving.
That's what I was thinking, one. The second thing is what happened, Carla, how long ago was the nun issue? 2 years ago? 3 years ago?
2012.
Was it?
2012.
So several years ago. Was that a paradigm shifting? So it means that as things change, you have to have the ability to not only change the tactical report that you write, but the way you think. Is this class, and I would say it's a small component, is this class part of a paradigm shift at Whitewell?
Yeah, I think you see that in the strategic plan. I think you see a lot of the principles that we're talking about in here come through.
Yeah, you actually see the words systems thinking
Right.
in a lot of, like if you look at like job descriptions or, like the,
Okay.
Now, it's not like a waterfall. It's not gonna happen overnight.
It's not. But that is the idea. The only problem is that the system is asking, and I believe ORNL to some extent has a paradigm shift. I don't know Rubbermaid. because you just bought somebody.
We constantly have one. Because so for about I've been there like 7 years. For the first 3 years, they were in the process of getting rid of a bunch of companies that weren't making profit. And then last year, we bought Jardine Corporation and Elmer's and expanded out, and now they're going back through and cutting some of those back out. So they're going up and down depending upon what the goals of the new CEO and upper management is. I do have a question though, is that the paradigm, does that affected by the resiliency of the system to go back to the way that things were? How much does that play a factor? Like if you're changing if you have a paradigm shift and you're having people who are, the system is changing some of the way that it does things, some of the goals, some of the ideas that it stands for. But there's a built-in resiliency of not wanting to have those things change.
Where did we read that?
Resistant, you went.
Yeah, the resistance.
I can't
to
remember,
change.
it was chapter 4 or 5?
It's like
I can't
5, I
remember.
think, chapter 5.
The,
Because that's
the
what we see
idea
in
of
ours.
resistance to change.
So, and that's what we see in our system a lot, is that we have, the paradigm needs to be changed and we're kind of forced to change it, but then there's still a lot of lingering resistance to that change.
Why do you think, okay, now here's the thing I want to show you, that you have the ability to articulate that. Why do you think that there is a resistance to change?
Comfort level?
No, no, no.
I don't know.
I want you to talk to me in systems language.
Delays and stops.
Well, the goal changes of the system.
Watch this.
Mountain.
What does my son want to do?
Have fun.
Have fun. So if I said, baby, you aren't going to have any more money, do you think he's going to resist to that? Where do you think he's going to go? To his mommy. And say, Daddy's being mean to me. And you see that the resistance comes not because people say, oh my God, because you in essence are disjointing or misaligning what you are doing with what they believe is their focus. If I have a very comfortable job, and I can do that in 6 to 8 hours a day, all right, and then you make a change, which is great for the system, but you have to remember these loops are connected at a hierarchy, and I go down to that thing, then all of a sudden I say, oh my God, this person doesn't care. All they want to do is they don't want to see the company work well. And here's what I've seen in organizations, and I wouldn't say everybody, I would not say it's a majority, but it exists. Companies believe that people are hired to meet their initiatives or goals or whatever. Many people that I have met believe that they are working there not to achieve the goals of the company, but to achieve their balance in life. That's one of the biggest issues I see. So there is where your resistance is. And if you remember I showed a very simplistic view of the emergency room, and I took it from a strategic to the operational all the way to the personal level. There's a tremendous misalignment of goals. I can tell you this, and Carla can correct me. I am aligned with what UT wants to do, not because what UT says. Mine is because there is this agenda in my mind, that mission in my mind, that by the time I retire, my group is going to be the #1 group in the country in what we do. That's what's driving me. When they say we're going to be top 25, it has nothing to do with it. Whether they want to be top 25, top 100, top 10, it would not make a difference, because it is in what has happened is we are aligned in the way we think. But that doesn't always happen. Because, what is it? Success for the successful. Just like in hospitals, you look at and you treat physicians in a different way, universities treat faculty in a different way. Carla and I were talking about this last week. That how is it that they treat staff and they treat faculty in two different ways? So they have got me to a point where I'm aligned, but majority of the staff, correct me, tell me, are they aligned? So if they came back and said, staff, we want you to work harder because, or different way, not harder, but in a different way, so we can get to the top 25, guess what? We're gonna have a tremendous amount of resistance. All right, are we okay? The second thing, I'm running short.
I think that clock is.
Clock's an hour off.
The second thing we talk about is whatever paradigm you choose, whatever paradigm you choose, see, the paradigm that you choose can be your leverage point. My paradigm, again, I don't know whether we're going to make it into number one. We may end up at 1,622. But my paradigm determines everything. Okay? This paradigm determines for me my goals, the rules, the delays, the parameters are defined by that. So let's talk about certain goals. Goals are, we want to be number one. Rules. I would say that my group, and this is probably one of the larger groups at UT, probably works harder than anybody else. On the breaks, you will see majority of them there. If you go at night, they are sitting there working. If we say that we are going to deliver something 2 days from now to somebody, we would all work at night. And I've seen us, and I said, you know, Jeremy, go home. And I come back, and at 11 o'clock at night, and I see those people working, because that's what we have. So everything that we do is aligned with the paradigm. When the paradigm shifts to the day, guys, I don't care anymore, I want to go to the